What can you learn about world literature from reading every single one of 120 winners of the Nobel Prize for Literature? What can you learn about world history? What can you learn about life? Because reading history, reading literature, after all, that's what it's really for, isn't it? To help you get along with your life. And has there ever been anyone who can say they've read every single winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature? Certainly before I began this little challenge that I'm doing on the Burning Archive YouTube channel, I'm Jeff Rich. I only read about, 40 odd of the Nobel Prizes for the winners of the Nobel Prize for Literature. But by October this year, I plan to have read every single one of the 120 winners and show you how you can do it too. I'm doing all the details of this incredible literary challenge, Ultimate Book Lovers Challenge, over at my Substack, jeffrich.substack.com. And in this video, I'm going to kind of introduce you to all of those 7 winners and point to you how you can read those people for free through various internet resources, which are really easy to get to. Well, relatively easy to get to. The winners I'm looking at this time in this video is in 1920, perhaps one of the more controversial winners of the Nobel Prize won, and it was this gentleman here, Knut Hamsun, and that's him fairly late in life. And what he did late in life was perhaps a little bit controversial. So Knut Hamsun was a prolific writer. He wrote novels, poetry, short stories, plays, a travelogue, nonfiction, and essays. But all those works were deeply influenced by a notoriety that in a way began in World War I and ended tragically in World War II. Before World War II, he was recognised as a fountainhead of literary modernism. His style used techniques like stream of consciousness and interior monologues, which, we all know those things as hallmarks of literary modernism. And a later Nobel Prize winner, Isaac Bashevis Singer, great Russian short story writer, who won in 1978, called Hamsun the father of the modern school of literature in his every aspect, his subjectiveness, his fragmentariness, his use of flashbacks, his lyricism. A whole modern school of fiction in the 20th century stems from Hamsun. And I give a couple of examples of that kind of influence in my Substack at jeffrich.substack.com. You can sign up for free for the free weekly email there. And check out all my content about Nobel Prize, culture, history, and literature. I try to tell some interesting stories about, how history still affects our lives today, and not just the usual history of the West and, one nation, but histories from all around the world and from different perspectives. Anyhow, one of his greatest novels was a book called Growth of Soil. And there it is there. You can see it right there. Growth of the Soil by Knut Hamsun. What is it? It's about 400 pages. And that's book 1. And I sort of give a little bit of a sample of that, as well as a link to this also in my Substack this week. So, but really easy to get, and there are other works of those on places like Project Gutenberg and Internet Archive, all that sort of stuff. So great writer, prolific writer, really interesting writer, connecting with themes like environment and the simplicity of life in a modern technological world. But like many modernist writers of this era, like Yeats and Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot, Hampson was drawn to authoritarian and racialist politics. There were reasons for this in Europe. In that time, it was divided socially, democratically fragile, and there were perceived threats from the Red Bolshevik East. But it was primarily a sense of cultural grievance that drove Hampson and ended up putting him on the wrong side of history. In a way, he was resentful, particularly, and that resentment drove him mad politically. He hated the English, in part due to the treatment of Norway during World War One. I'm not entirely sure what it was that England, Britain did to Norway during World War One. If you do know, let me know in the comments below. But due to that attitude, he supported the German regime in the 1930s and the 1940s, and its collaborators in Norway, headed up by Vidkun Quisling. Have you ever heard the term someone is a Quisling? Someone who's sort of like just goes along with an oppressive ruler of some kind. Well, that term comes from this chap, Vidkun Quisling, who was the kind of de facto head of government of the regime that collaborated with the Germans during World War II in Norway, which was then occupied by Norway. Indeed, Knut Hamsun even travelled to Germany to meet with the leader of the government at that time. He kind of believed in that Pan-Germanic cause that we were talking about, and I go into that story in a little bit more detail in the Substack, and you might want to check it out. And as a result, he essentially betrayed his country. He was tried for treason at the end of the war, but he was excused, I guess, on the grounds of insanity. But he said, no, I was not insane. I entirely knew what I was trying to do. But at that stage, he was in his 80s, and really his resentment and his grievance had perhaps undone him. For years and decades after World War II, there was a lot of shame, a lot of questioning about this great modernist writer in Norway who yet expressed, the beauty of the Norwegian environment, the simplicity of life there, and some real, life dilemmas, and yet had done this terrible thing. And one Norwegian biographer said, "We can't help loving him," that is Knut Hamsun, "though we have hated him all these years. That's our Hamsun trauma. He's a ghost that won't stay in the grave." He was, in a way, a perpetual wanderer, and I tell that story a little bit more in my Substack at jeffrich.substack.com, where I'm going through every one of the 120 Nobel Prizes for Literature and showing you where you can read them too.